professor asked us what we wanted to be when we left. And there were a variety of answers, you know. There were a couple of people who said that they wanted a businessman, a pioneer, a visionary, and is currently a sitting member of the Rajya Sabha from Karnataka. He's one of the two independent candidates sitting. When you're sitting here, you're taught certain things, and there is a certain respect level that is given to them. So I'm against you. And right on top is the ability to write records. If you can write records, you can pass college big time. Nothing matters much more than that. If I can just create this perfect system, I will have the most brilliant batch of students ever graduating from college. Without taking into account the 5 or 10 minutes and to present the student point of view, but because of some technical delays, we are already running behind schedule. I will cut my speech short via his words. I've told you that he's been a sitting member of the Rajya Sabha. Of all of you, ridiculous amounts to make a trump call at clarity that he cannot even understand the other person. Something best left to him. And if you are interested, please ask him that. Mr. Rajiv Chandrasekhar also currently, along with his work as an MP and an entrepreneur, owns a Radio Indigo show. If any of you want to see a selection of songs that you don't get, please tell him right now. At the last, but definitely not towards getting army personnel to actually have the right to vote. The very people who defend our democracy, being given the opportunity to participate in it, was something that was seen from this person's life sitting with us here today. And I consider it a privilege to hand over.
Thank you for a warm welcome. So let me just start. I'm told you're all electronics. You're electronics and communication engineers. So let me start by saying I have been a technology design engineer, and as I was introduced, I've been an entrepreneur, I've been a technology design engineer, I've been a political representative, and I'm not particularly keen on speaking. I'm not a very articulate speaker in the conventional way of how you recognize politicians speaking. I remember in the early days, when I was what maybe some of you are, I was what is referred to now as ethical hacking. I used to be a geek and I used to enjoy pulling down machines and systems. And I was asked to make a presentation to the CEO of a startup company that was doing one of the first multiprocessor Unix machines. And this is way before when you guys were even ideas or concepts, I think, that I was working on a machine like that. And I had debugged and worked on a multi-threaded Unix kernel. And I was asked to make this presentation to the CEO of the startup company, and I obviously made a complete mess of it because that was my first presentation ever. And he took me aside, and he's remained a friend all along. And after that, he took me aside and he said, "It's not really the style of the presentation, but the substance of the presentation that is important." And as I went on to then a career in the Silicon Valley, that advice stood me in good stead, and it still reminds me and resonates that in reality in life, what is really important is substance. It is not the style necessarily, and it is about real achievements and not rhetoric. So I've held that piece of advice very dearly, and more so after entering politics. You know, when I entered politics in 2006, I remember going into Parliament for the swearing-in ceremony, and it was like you guys came first day to college. I was actually sweating, I was very nervous, and a very senior politician came to me and said, "You know, why are you sweating so much? Your shirt's all stained and wet." And I said, "Look, for me, this is like going back to university because I expected to be in the company of many, many wise men in the round building that we all refer to as Parliament of India." Of course, 6 years later, I realized I had given them too much of credit, and it's not necessarily the case that the footsteps of our statesmen, founding fathers, have been necessarily followed by the same type of people. But I must say one thing that I have learned from my short stint in politics and as an entrepreneur and of course as an engineer before that. I enjoy engaging with young Indians, and I'll explain to you why in a nutshell. In 2012, I introduced into Parliament and forced a debate on the government on the issue of the freedom of the internet. And I don't know how many of you are aware of the Section 66 IT guidelines and how it has put a lot of fetters on what you can say and do on the net. But there was a full-fledged debate, and it's a sophisticated issue, it's a complex issue that was debated, freedom of expression, freedom to speak on the net. But I found most members of Parliament were not responding. They were quite bored, they were very tuned out, and we didn't get the kind of reaction that we expected to get. And a few days later, and I was just explaining this to somebody else earlier today, I was invited to a program by Delhi University students on a mock debate where there were a group of kids, youngsters, I shouldn't call them kids, youngsters who were debating whether the internet needed to be controlled, and there was a group of youngsters who were debating that the internet needed to be free. And I had, fortunately with me, taken a few government functionaries and some members of Parliament, and that 2-hour session was of such high quality and of such brilliance that it became obvious to me that a lot of the challenges that face India today can be best debated by youngsters and not just left to, let's say, the famous round building that we call the Parliament. So that brings me to the topic today, and I think it's about the role of the youth and first-time voters. And I'm sure you are being swarmed on social media, on television, by messaging about the forthcoming elections. So let me give you my sort of perspective on it, and I'm quite happy to take questions from you, and I hope I can help you make up your mind and clear your mind about how you should see these elections. Like I said, I do engage a lot with young groups like this, not with any particular intention to push any agenda, but to hopefully shape thinking and get people to ask the right questions. And at a college outside Delhi, in a very similar program like this, after I had spoken about first-time voters, a young lady walked up to me and explained to me, gave me her view on why she believed there was so much interest by political parties in the 150 million odd first-time voters. And she said to me, and this still resonates in my head, she said to me, and I quote, and I'm paraphrasing obviously, but she said something like this: "Sir, it is because our minds haven't been polluted yet by prejudices and propaganda." And I thought that was the most brilliant description I've heard about why your vote is important and why your views are important and why your participation in these elections are important. Because you are approaching these elections without any baggage. You're not influenced by many years of propaganda and prejudice. And so therefore, for me, this is a big deal. And you may ask me, why is this such a big deal? And let me explain to you in 3 very simple examples of why this is important for people like me who are trying to mobilize the first-time vote. In 2008, I was introduced, I'm still an independent MP, I was an independent MP then. I first raised the issue of the 2G scam in Parliament. So I was an independent, I was not in any party, and I raised the issue. I wrote letters to the Prime Minister, I wrote letters to the Finance Minister, trying to drum up public opinion and awareness of what, as you all know, became the big telecom scam. But in 2008, I met with very limited success. Very few people responded, and mainly because they would say, what is the big deal of spectrum? Why is free air so valuable? And so I was met with a lot of skepticism and cynicism. And it stayed that way till 2010, when, as you know, our famous CAG, Vinod Rai, a man to whom this country owes a great deal, exposed the scam. And to use a colloquialism, and I won't use the exact word here, but dash 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 hit the fan. Similarly, in 2011, when Anna Hazare and Arvind Kejriwal sat in Jantar Mantar to demand an anti-corruption law, and I supported them publicly in 2011 by writing in papers and raising the issue in Parliament, most politicians, and indeed most of media, dismissed the whole movement, which I, by the way, call India's Tahrir Square. They dismissed it by saying this is a middle-class elite temporary obsession. But what it took was millions of young Indians and social media to completely transform the momentum of that movement. And as you know, today you have a law, you have a new alternative party called the Aam Aadmi Party. So again it shows when young Indians get involved and put their might behind a cause, the momentum is just completely transformed. In 2009, I'll give you another example. In 2009, where scores of proud retired veteran soldiers who were protesting at the way the government of India is treating them, decided in anguish, and I was part of that, in Jantar Mantar in Delhi to return their medals, which is like a big thing for a veteran soldier to give back. He works 30, 40 years to earn those medals, puts his life and limb on the line, and he returned those medals in protest, in silent, dignified protest. Nobody covered it. There was no media coverage, there was, politicians didn't give too much of a damn. But few years later, lots of youngsters in Delhi got involved. There's a group that was formed called Citizens for Forces, and they started creating a whole movement on social media. Recently, I launched something on change.org, and we had in a few weeks 60,000 people signing up for that petition. Again, showing to you that a cause which otherwise does not find support from conventional society or media, when Young India gets behind it, it sort of transforms in terms of its visibility and momentum. So that is the case I make to all young Indians. It is important that you and other Indians get involved because you have tremendous power, you have tremendous power to get heard, to make yourself heard. And in a very simple way, look, it is really your life to lead. It is your country that you are going to spend a lot of time in terms of your future, and you have the most to gain or lose in terms of the direction of this country. So let's talk a little bit, now that I've established that you need to get involved, let's talk a little bit about these elections. And first of all, let me gauge your interest in the elections. How many of you plan to vote in these elections? See, that's good. I mean, I would like to have had it 100%, but that's a start. How many of you have already decided whom to vote for? Now this is good, which means you have an open mind, you want to vote, but you have an open mind on whom you will vote for. So let me not take that further and let me ask you, let me lay out what I believe ought to be the questions that you ask. Let's be very clear, as usual, in every election time, there will be many efforts at making elections many things. Politicians and political parties have it in their DNA to try and characterize elections in all forms but what it should be. They will try and scare people, they will try and confuse you, they will try and lead you in a different direction. But what the first time voters must demonstrate is the ability to cut through to the main issues and ask the right questions and force the discourse to stay on track on the issues that are important to you and important to your country. So let me lay out what I believe are important for these elections. And all of you are free at an individual level to make up your own views and questions. But let me say this. I believe, and I have written about this extensively, I have spoken about this, that given the backdrop of scams and corruption and economic failure, that these are, first of all, the most important elections in independent India's history. So that is my take on it. I'm not forcing these views on anyone. I will tell you what I believe in, and I believe in this strongly. Second point, these elections are a referendum or a report card. Think of it like any report card on the performance of the current government. In a sense, you are grading, or the voter is grading its performance on issues of economy, development, security, job creation, on governance, and indeed at a different level on the moral performance of the people who have governed us. Number 3, these elections are about who will form the new government in Delhi and who will be a new Prime Minister. Number 4, these elections are about what kind of government and economic model do you want. Now what does that mean? Do you seek a government that is bigger, with more bureaucracy and more departments and more spending? Or do you want a government that is focused on enabling opportunities, creating investments, less of doles and social security and more of opportunities and jobs and investment? Number 5, do you see politics, or do you see politicians as looking at politics as a means to power and money, or do you want to choose people who want to serve the country and serve the public? There are 2 types of politicians that I've met. The majority of them are people who look at politics as power, and they will use the word, for example, rule. They will say things like, we will win the elections and come to power, as if we replaced one Maharaja with another Maharaja. The real view of politics is what John F. Kennedy said. It is about serving the public. It is about volunteerism. It is about serving the nation. So make your mind up about what kind of politicians and politics you want to support and encourage. Number 6, how important is it for you to have a Prime Minister who's accountable, who stands up there and says, I am responsible, I made a mistake, or I am responsible, I did the right thing? Or do you want people who hide behind alibis and so on and so forth? Do you see India as one strong nation united in the idea of India regardless of caste, religion, color, gender, or age? Or do you see diversity being the defining definition of India, which is that we are different and we are just collectively one loose definition of India? Do you see an India where all Indians, regardless of caste, religion, feel equal in law, equal in society, and confident about pursuing life and its choices? Now, I have laid out some questions.